afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get this started. Welcome to everybody who's here in the room and everybody who's attending over Zoom to our ECE Alumni lecture. And this is for the Alumni Impact Award winner of 2022, Vikram Verma. I am Mingyan Liu. I'm the chair of Electrical and Computer Engineering in the East Department. I'm delighted to welcome you here to this talk. A quick word on this award. The Alumni Impact Award is the highest recognition granted by ECE to its alumni. It recognizes individuals who have made a significant and lasting impact in their field. Vic has had a very distinguished career leading technology companies to financial success. He began his career at Savi Technology, a leader in RFID-based tracking and security solutions. Within 5 years, he was their chief operating officer and negotiated Savi's acquisition by Texas Instruments. He remained as president and CEO of Savi until it was acquired by Lockheed Martin. He again made the cuts and remained at Lockheed as president of strategic venture development. Vic later became CEO of 8x8 Inc., a cloud communications company, and oversaw the acquisition of 8 companies. It had to be 8, right? Now, a recovering CEO, as he calls himself, he sits on the board of several companies. Through all of this, Vic decided that engineering is logical, but life isn't, the title of his talk today. Vic graduated from Michigan with his master's degree in electrical engineering in 1989, and then another graduate degree from Stanford. He also attended several executive management programs. We're delighted to have you here with us today, Vic, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Professor Liu. I very much appreciate the Alumni Impact Award, and I appreciate the invitation to be here back on Michigan North Campus. I think the last time I was here was, I think Professor Lipa and I did some work together in 1992. So it's almost 30 years and there's a lot more buildings. When I went to Michigan, we're talking about 1988 timeframe. It was a simpler time. And we always beat Ohio State. We contended for the national championship pretty much all the time in basketball. There was no internet. There's absolutely no internet. There were no cell phones, and this building was brand new. So we literally are talking about a totally different time. So anyway, part of what I want to talk to you about is it's been a long journey for me. And the education I got here was the foundation of pretty much everything I've ever been able to do in my life. But one of the realizations I've had over the years is how much we believe in the logic and the rigor and the capabilities that we get out of an engineering education. It's never enough. Life really is illogical. And in the end, that's what makes the difference. It really does come down to the fact that you can start with an engineering education. That's the core. But you have to be open to logic, and it really ends up being people along the journey that absolutely influence your life. And if you embrace that, that leads to a much richer experience. So I'll walk you through my journey. It's actually an interesting picture. That's me. That's also me. Just a few years apart. My parents haven't changed that much. I unfortunately have. But my love affair with logic started a long time ago. I have always believed, literally right from the very beginning, in the value of an engineering education. I love the teamwork. I love the collaboration. I love the fact that it's a whole series of people working together with disparate backgrounds, diverse viewpoints, and building something together. It is about the collective, not the individual. Ideas are to a penny. The ability to reduce them to practice, to work as a team, to collaborate, to constantly move the ball forward, building with attribution on the work of others, is what really engineering was all about. I always found that fascinating. And that was a key element of what drove me. I was also influenced by my father. My father is an amazing man. He grew up dirt poor. He lost his father at an early age. He went through a rigorous series of education where he did it at night so he could support his family during the day. And over time ended up to be one of the most senior government officers in the country and an author of 10 different law books that are still quoted. But what he taught me very early on is you need to focus on your weakness. It is about basically building the whole. So when I was growing up, my worst subjects was math and science. I love history. I love literature. I love social studies. I pretty much almost flunked math and science, which is why I went into engineering. Because in Dad's view, and it's the right view in my view, I think I met with some of you, some of our students today, and that was a question somebody had asked me, which is, how do you decide what to focus on? You focus on the stuff you don't want to do. Because then the stuff you want to do, you'll always be able to do. The stuff you don't want to do makes you better. And so that's why I decided to go into an engineering education. And so first thing you do after that is, on the good news front, engineering was logical. Everything made sense. But very early on, literally right after I made the decision to go to university, to study engineering, I figured out logic was not enough. I think all of you are familiar with this guy. He struggles with the same concept that I've struggled with. And so what I'm going to do for the rest of this talk is I'll use a series of vignettes to tell you about how, for me at least, each element in my journey, I got to a certain point due to my background in engineering, and then that leap happened because of people, because of illogic, because of blind luck at sometimes. This does not apply to everybody, by the way. This is my journey. You'll see my successes, my failures, some really dunderheaded things I did over time. Some worked, some didn't. But I think the main point I wanted to get across to all of you is you have laid the right foundation, but you have to be open to the fact that this foundation is a necessary but not necessarily a sufficient condition to be successful, however you define success. So I think several of you are international students out here. So right after you get into a top university, that's stressful, but you feel good. What's the next thing you have to do? You got to get a visa. Scariest thing now. It was hard when I was going to school, which is, again, I'm talking about the mid to late 80s when dinosaurs roamed. It's much harder now. One of the most intimidating experiences you go through. You go to the embassy, you stand in front of a consular officer, you tell them why you are qualified to come to the United States to study. I'm prepared. I'm logical, precise, all my arguments laid out, everything perfect, all my paperwork together. I go in, stand in front of the consular officer, and he said, no, denied. What? I walked out completely flabbergasted. What happened? No idea. And as I walked home, for whatever reason, I still don't know what caused me to do this. I turned around. I went back in. The guy happened to be on a break. Even better, the guard at the door let me in and said, he's right there, just go chat with him for a few minutes. I go right up to him and I go, I'm qualified. I'm good. I'll make a contribution. Why would you deny me? And I kept talking. And initially you could see the guys looking at me like, seriously? But as I kept talking, a twinkle started to form in this guy's eye. And he says, you know what? I like the fact that you showed initiative. I like the fact that you're passionate. We need more people like you. Visa granted. Stamped it on the spot. And I'm not kidding. I still had nightmares for years about that moment. It was not logical. I just met somebody who saw something in me and was willing to change his mind for, frankly, no real reason, just emotion. There was no logic in it. It was just luck. My life may have turned out equally good, maybe even more rewarding, but definitely different. One decision by an individual I do not know, who just took a chance. No logic, just life. And so after that, I came to Florida Tech, actually a fun school, right on the beach. We all wore flip-flops to class. I actually even learned to surf, maybe not so well, but a fun school. I enjoyed it, very focused on engineering, specialization in electromagnetic field theory. As an undergraduate, I specialized in electromagnetic field theory, again, because it was the hardest thing that I could figure out, with the possible exception of Schrödinger's wave equation, but Maxwell's equations were hard enough. So I went into electromagnetic field theory, antenna design, communication systems. That became my focus. And I did well. Generally, electromagnetic field theory makes sense. It's hard, it's painful, it's annoying, but it generally makes sense. And I was doing well. And I had this one professor, a former Michigan man, a very proud Michigan man. He was very often in class, he would make the comment that Ohio State was a community college. He kept calling the University of Michigan the university. If he had his druthers, University of Michigan would change the name and just call themselves the university. He actually felt Ohio State should not be allowed to give any engineering degrees. They should stick to liberal arts. I'm not sure whether he was serious or not. To this day, I still don't know. But he was a former Marine, a hard charger, hard driver, tough grader, great role model. Took 4 classes with him, aced every one of them. I was literally on track to have a 4.0 GPA to graduate. And then I took a microwave circuits class from him. Did really well in the midterm, 97%. Okay. Midterm was worth 50% of my grade. Now I look back, I had 17 credits I was taking that quarter. So what do you do when you're logical? You optimize. Okay, I'm doing well in this class. I can put in a little less effort. I'm doing great in this one. Okay, even less effort. This one, I'm struggling, more effort. You got to be logical. You got to be efficient. You don't want to overdo stuff. That's what logic teaches you. You want to put in the right amount of effort to get the result. Grades come out. C. Seriously? Dr. Nunn, you gave me a C. Yes. Why? Because, look, you were coasting. I'm not in this business to let people coast. You're here to learn. You're not here to optimize my class. You're lucky it wasn't an F. And by the way, this guy was this tall, but when he stood up, it was intimidating. And he's like, there's a lesson for you here. Lesson is, if you take my class, you're here to learn. You're not here to game the system. You were gaming the system, and you know what? You got caught. See, that's it. No makeup exam, no nothing. And I graduated co-valedictorian, all A's, 1 C. Michigan man. I still came here, by the way. And he still wrote my recommendation, which I was a little concerned about. I did try to get my revenge against Dr. Nunn. Back in 2002, I gave the commencement address at Florida Institute of Technology. And as part of that, you had about 5,000 students all around. Faculty sits in the front row, particularly, then you put the PhD students, and Dr. Nunn's right up there front and center. And extemporaneously, I said, Dr. Nunn, please stand up. I recounted the story. I said, Dr. Nunn gave me a C, right? And Dr. Nunn, and I've learned, never take on professors, with a booming voice, without the aid of a microphone, which I think is owned by 40 years of teaching. He looked around and said, "You're lucky it wasn't an F, or you wouldn't be standing there." So I learned my lesson. But the lesson, same comment. I did everything logically. I optimized. I did what engineering taught me. You put in the right amount of effort to get the right amount of result. And this one professor taught me a lesson. Whatever you do, I don't care whatever it is, you don't try to optimize. You go for it and then deal with the consequences later. Great message. And that was Dr. Nutt. So after that, I came to Michigan. Another very logical reason. Radiation laboratory, world famous electromagnetic field theory. Professors like Tom Senior, who actually hosted me for a visit in the fall before I graduated. John Valakas, Linda Katehi, Val Lipa, Fawaz Ulavi, just absolute luminaries, smart, dedicated. And on top of that, when I first came to Michigan, and I think this may have been a trick by Dr. Senior, he had me visit the campus around August timeframe. Sun was shining, birds were singing, not a single cloud in the sky. And I looked at it and I said, this is Florida without the hurricanes. This is awesome. So I came here, excited, full ride fellowship. I'm going to enjoy this. And then, with apologies to Game of Thrones, winter came. I think you guys have it now even more so, but even then, all the offices were connected. There were underground tunnels to the library, to I think it was the union, the Duderstadt, all that, everything was all connected. I don't think I saw the sun for about 6 months. And it was the fastest master's degree I have ever done. I love the people here. The core talent we had here was interesting. And I'll give you an interesting contrast between here and Stanford, where I went to. But here, literally, it was awe-inspiring. I struggled, but man, I did a fast master's degree. Because it's amazing when you see no sun, and when there's snow on the ground, all you do is study. And actually, probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because if I hadn't studied every minute of every day, I wouldn't have graduated. Because people around you, just to give you guys a perspective, one of my peers was Professor Kamal Sarabandi. I feel like a cave person next to his intellect. But that was the caliber of people we had here when I made it. And literally 9 months, master's degree, and I transferred to Stanford for my PhD. Biggest contrast between Michigan and Stanford. One, in Stanford, there is actually perpetual sun. The other contrast is the caliber of students at Stanford and Michigan is identical. One difference. And does anybody here know the TV series Game of, what is it, Big Bang Theory? Ever seen that character Sheldon Cooper? Okay, so imagine Sheldon Cooper's. In Michigan, Sheldon Cooper says he's working really hard. In Stanford, Sheldon Cooper says he's partying all the time, but secretly is working hard. So in Michigan, you know when your butt is being kicked by somebody, you know they put in the work. At Stanford, your butt gets kicked by somebody and then they claim they partied all night. But the same concept. Phenomenal experience at Stanford. Stanford has a unique thing that they do, which is different than I think the qualifying exam you run here. At Stanford, the qualifying exam involves you going to meet with 10 different professors for I think 10 minutes each. All over campus. It's done over the course of a day and they can ask you any question. Most will ask you questions in your field, but some will ask you really wacko questions. Why a manhole covers round, etc. About 150 people with a master's degree take this test every year and they fail about 80 of them. So that's a big deal. I came in 28 out of 147. And I'm sitting there going, I am great. I survived Michigan. I'm surviving Stanford. I'm well on my way to getting my PhD. I have a fully funded scholarship. I even have a stipend. I am great. What can go wrong? My career's all set. One day I could be a department chair or a dean of engineering or even a president. This is all laid out, logical. Everything is falling into place. And then one summer, I took a Statistics 116 course. I still remember the name of the course. Statistics 116, undergraduate, juniors and seniors. But I wanted to learn a little bit more about statistics, and all my classes were paid for, so I thought, okay, I'll take this course. Midterm comes. 60. Whoa, that was hard. 60 out of 100. I'm a PhD student at one of the top universities. I came in 28 out of 147 on the qualifying exam. That can't be anybody smarter than me. 60, that means everybody here must have flunked. I look around, there's this well-built kid sitting next to me. He used to always sit next to me. He was actually Stanford's Heisman Trophy candidate running back. Still remember the guy's name, John Volpe, ended up playing in the Canadian Football League. Well-built kid, stayed quiet in class. I look over, I go, man, if I got 60, this poor kid is in shock. Stanford's having a rough time this year in football. I don't want this kid to drop out of school. So I'm going to console him. I don't want Stanford's top running back leaving the school because of a Statistics 116 course. That's my duty. So I turn over to the kid, go, hey, John, how did you do? He goes, yeah, it was a tough exam. I only got a 95. What? You're a football player. Not just that, you're a really good football player. You just ran over me. I'm the PhD student. And that's when it dawned on me. I'm not that good. There are certain people, and probably several of you here, where education comes naturally. It didn't come naturally to me. How logical I was, how well I had planned out my career, how much I wanted to be like Professor Liu, I knew that even if I got my PhD, I would be average, if that. Because it never came naturally. It's a completely illogical decision. I didn't want to be average. I knew the path I was on, even though my fellowship was fully funded. And I think for those of you who know what tuition is like, imagine where your tuition is fully paid for and they give you a stipend, which includes housing and food and a little bit of pocket money. I never thought I would need more money than that. I walked away from it because I went, I don't want to be average. I know the path this will take me on. I don't want to be average. I walked away from a fully funded fellowship. That could have been a disastrous decision. Completely illogical, but in the end, the right one. 5 of us got together and started a company. And very logical, 5 male students. This is how I learned a lesson about the need for diversity of viewpoints. 5 male graduate students decided, what product do we want to build? Okay, what product do we want to build? We are going to track children in a supermarket or anywhere, so in case kids get lost, the movie had come out called Aliens. I think for some of you, you might have seen it. It's probably in historical archive somewhere. Where you see when these aliens are coming, you have this little device and it keeps getting warmer. Well, that's what we came up with. Brilliant idea by 5 male graduate students. Every person is going to look at this and go, this is awesome. Slight problem. We went, built the prototype. Moms make the purchasing decision. First mom we approached was $500. Second, that looks like an electronic leash for my child. Third comment, are you implying I'm a bad mother? Moral of the story, do your market research. Make sure you do it with the demographic you want to actually sell it. Luckily for us, not so luckily for him, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and the US military shipped all these cargo containers across the country, across the world actually, but they had no idea what was inside them. They called it just in case logistics. You've heard the story, Iron Mountains. We had containers upon containers because they just kept shipping them over to get ready for the war, Desert Storm at that time. And the idea was, just in case you didn't get the first cargo container, I'll send you another one. And just in case you didn't get the second one, I'll send you a third one. And you ended up with mountains and mountains of container with nobody having any idea inside any of them. They were literally using those helicopters to lift containers to try and figure out what the contents were. Massive logistical mess. And so DARPA got involved. DARPA said, hey, we have this really weird technology called the internet. All it is college students sending emails to each other. We don't see any logical use for that. I'm giving you an actual example. We're talking about 1990. There was no practical application of the internet. It literally was college students sending notes to each other. What do we do with this stuff? But I tell you, we got a great idea. If you can tie your internet to this child tracking technology, which is RFID, and use it to track my cargo containers, it will become the Internet of Things. That was DARPA's term. When you approach 5 people who have no money, who just bombed on their first idea, and you tell them, hey, what if you take this internet technology, combine it with RFID technology, and use it to track every cargo container in the world in real time, and so that soldiers can figure out where our boots are? Can you do it? Completely illogical. Of course we can. And actually, we did. Savi was born. Some interesting stories. First product shipment. That was me with hair. But it literally was. You took a risk. Complete non sequitur risk. A 5-person company beat out Motorola to track cargo containers in the world. And by the time this company was done, over $1 billion of revenue had been earned by this company. And every cargo container in the world, for the US military, for NATO, for Israel, was tracked using our technology. It's called the Savi Tech. Completely illogical. Difference? People. A whole bunch of people who came together, refused to accept that we had failed by picking the wrong market, refused to accept that this was nuts, and just kept iterating and iterating and kept iterating until we won. No logic. Just people. Give you a little excerpt. You'll see this because this was in CNBC years ago.
You click it again.
Okay. Let me just make sure. Click it.
Got shipped to the Gulf and they had no idea what was inside 28,000 of them. They called it just in case logistics.
It's very difficult to find out what was in those containers. We didn't have the automated technology we have today. So in large part, it was a manual operation.
A soldier can walk over and with a handheld device, read the entire contents of the container or do a search such that he looks at a whole sea of containers and presses the word milk. And only those containers that have milk in it will respond, and a little arrow will come on and point the soldier right to that particular container.
Tracking children to tracking containers. This was, I think if you were to Google this, this was the first example of the Internet of Things. The term Internet of Things was coined for what we did. And Professor Lipa actually, years ago, back in '92, did a lot of the RF testing in Willow Run Lab for those RFID tags to make sure we had the range. Because Willow Run and Iraq have a lot of similarities. We won't go there. Next logical thing right after this, Homeland Security. We had September 11 happen, commerce shut down. This one was actually logical. What's the logical application of a system used to track ammunition and all cargo containers for everybody You adapt it by putting a little seal on it and use it to track every cargo container around the world.
They will be used by the world's 3 largest port operators, covering more than 80% of U.S. imports. Savi is part of an initiative patterned after a Department of Defense program used to track weapons shipments.
What we've got is a very, very robust system. I mean, you don't transfer ammunition around the world and just make it available for anybody to just hack into.
This kind of equipment is what the technology that everybody has been talking rhetorically about in Washington, D.C. since September 11th will actually be on those containers within a few months, and the citizens in our region can know that a very positive step has been taken.
This is my favorite picture because I think this is a true American hero. Secretary Powell demonstrated this to all of his counterparts at the Asia Pacific Economic Conference on October 18, 2003. Sadly, Secretary Powell died 18 years later to the day from that day. But you get the gist. People. How does a company which had logically arrived, albeit with somewhat false logic, on a product path of tracking children, suddenly pivot to becoming the global standard for tracking cargo containers and securing them around the world, and do it over a few years? Not logic. Eventually, Savi was acquired by Lockheed Martin. Interesting pictures. Actually, that is Ken Washington. I think he was the CTO of Ford. Ken and I worked together at Lockheed Martin. And then at Lockheed, it was a great, great gig, but that's a story for another day. At Lockheed, my job at Lockheed was to commercialize all of those amazing technologies that have been developed by the military, skunk works, et cetera, and come up with commercial applications. They range from mining of the ocean floor to nanomaterials to cybersecurity, et cetera, et cetera. But again, that's the topic for another day. I just want to kind of give you guys the closure on Savi, which is company, 5 people, missed its market, pivoted, took a chance, dreamt big, ended up with a huge exit for all the shareholders. People. So after Lockheed, I had never run a public company. And I was given a very interesting opportunity. He was a public company going through a massive transformation. It was what is called VoIP. So basically voice over internet protocol, phone systems. Our view was communication was going to go through a massive, massive change. Voice, chat, video, contact center was all going to come together, and you would have to fundamentally reimagine how companies communicate. So I took over as CEO. I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish. When I joined, the company had about 300-400 people, I think about 400 people. By the time I left, 1,700 people. When I joined, the company had a market cap of about 700 million. By the time I left, it was 2.3 billion. Revenue went from about 100 million to 550 million. Every definition, I also got to ring the bell at NASDAQ. And then the next year I moved the company from NASDAQ to New York Stock Exchange. So then I ran the bell at New York Stock Exchange. Great success under any definition, except I missed something pretty fundamental. And I mean, again, I missed it because of logic, but luckily, one individual, a young kid whose name I actually don't even remember right now, pushed me in a totally different direction. So I was convinced voice would be the core of any communication. Logical. We all had those, I think for those of us who are older, those Cisco, large video conferencing systems, the Tandberg machines, all of those really sophisticated, you used to pay $100,000 for some of them. And I remember them being very expensive paperweights. I remember I would use them one time And then after that, you go back to voice or email or chat. So I was not convinced that video was it. So I built a system focused on voice. Luckily, in 2018, we used to have an interesting tradition. We would bring new hires into the company once a month, and they would all present to senior executives in our backyard about something that they, if they were king for a day, that they would do different. And there were some real doozies that came out. I mean, so imagine somebody who's been in a company for 2, 3, 4 weeks, is standing in front of the CEO, the CMO, the CFO, and they're basically being asked to say, what would you change? And I said, some people came up with some brilliant ideas, but I remember this one young kid stood up and he goes, you guys are missing it. What? What are we missing? My generation leads with video and then chat. Your generation thinks voice. We need to pivot or we will be roadkill. We're building a better and better and better voice-centric system. And if we do not pivot to video, we will be absolute roadkill. And I remember the vehemence with which you said it. Late in the evening, sitting on our deck, lecturing senior executives that we'd missed the ball. And we did have a culture. I think we used to encourage people that in our company, it was totally okay to call the CEO an idiot. Some of them actually enjoyed doing it. But actually, when we did a deep dive, this kid was right. We missed. Again, groupthink. All of us, certain age, we went out and acquired video conferencing technology from Atlassian, integrated it into our system, introduced it in November of 2019. November of 2019, 100,000 monthly active users. Pretty good, right? Yeah, we dodged a bullet. By March, 20 million monthly active users in 2020. So on the one hand, we did a good defensive thing, but on the other hand, we could have been Zoom. If I had been smarter and thought about this 3, 4, 5 years earlier, we could have been Zoom. The good news is we built a system, but we weren't roadkill. The bad news is we didn't catch the full wave. Again, people, completely logical decisions, market research. And I think for those of us who are over 40 that are all in this room, we're all nodding our head going, yep, we remember those old video conferencing systems. They were horrible. It was a joke. The first 15 minutes of every meeting was trying to futz with the hardware, trying to make it work. And then the next 15 minutes was, does it really work? Can you hear me? No, can you hear me? And then it's like, oh. And then after that, you threw it out the window. But world changed. And of course, we couldn't have totally foreseen the pandemic because suddenly video became central. So again, I bring this up. What's the key comment? People. And that is the #1 lesson I want to get across to all of you, at least the lesson from my life. People, people, people. That's folks at 8x8. That's the meeting we used to have in our backyard it was literally every month. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy put up with us having that meeting every month because we were hiring so many people. So all new hires, plus their managers, plus senior executives would meet in our backyard every month. But the point of this year is at work, people make the difference. And it's never the people you think they will. In other words, stop trying to judge a person by seniority or experience or even smarts. Sometimes a person with the least relevant experience comes up with the idea, you just have to be open to it. And the view I've always had is there's only 2 things that matter with people, right? You don't care where they come from. You don't care which God they worship, caste, creed, gender, none of that matters. What's in their head and what's in their heart. We saved the company because somebody was willing to say, you guys need to get video in. And you got to do it quick. But at the same time, I wish I thought about it earlier. But that same way that people make a difference at home, make a difference at work, people also make a difference at home. Because in the end, we are no islands. As human beings, you will find we are all social creatures. And so that same applies to at home. Truly multicultural pictures, aren't they? Nice juxtaposition. Look, I owe a lot to my family. I owe a lot to my dad, who basically worked really hard throughout his life so all of us could have a better life. I owe a lot to my mother, who has 2 boys and let both of them go to the US, despite knowing that over time, that would cause a whole lot of loneliness in her life. I owe a lot to my brother, who basically worked really hard and was always there. My wife, Sandy, out there, as she has pointed out to me, I am a one-dimensional person. I recognize that. She has made me see color and ambiguity and the fact that there is much more to life than just a single track focus on work. Her twin, that's not really a twin, but that's her twin, right? Who also has that same viewpoint. People make the difference. People like none, who absolutely had no problem giving me a seat. Actually, I think he enjoyed it, right? A visa officer that I have never met before, who took a chance. A football player who kicked my butt in a non-football sense. People at Savi, who when given a choice of saying, hey, we have no money, we're running out of money, we have no customers, and we have been given this awesome responsibility that we're going to build a technology that's never been built before. We're going to do it for a mission critical application like making sure soldiers have weapons and food. Of course, no problem. We can. Or the team at 8x8 that kept evolving a company to get us to this point. People. So that's my final view. Every one of you is going to chart your own course, and you should. These are just my viewpoints. By the way, that was the initial prototype for tracking children. I mean, to me, it makes total sense. But I think you have people around you. The key thing for all of you is, I am a believer, and this is my viewpoint. There is no substitute for a very solid, rigorous engineering education. And I know I'm going to irritate a lot of liberal arts people, et cetera. I'm actually a big believer in that. Engineering teaches you discipline. It teaches you collaboration. It teaches you how the sum is greater than, the sum is much, much greater than the individual. It teaches you the fact that ideas are just the beginning point. Reducing it to practice is the key. It teaches you about milestones. It teaches you about budget. It teaches you so many things. I think that you don't get that from any other education. But you have to then couple it with knowing that that's a necessary, not a sufficient condition. And the other thing is you have to surround yourself with people. And you have to be willing to listen. And you have to be willing to take a chance. And again, as I said, each of you is going to make your own decision. There is no right decision or wrong decision. But I am telling you, if you do surround yourself with the right people, and by right people, I'm saying only focus, not on their accomplishment, not on their resume, just what's in their head, what's in their heart, and just go for it. And who knows what will come out of it. I know you'll live a rich and fulfilling life. Thank you very much.